Net Nasumer Pu Natram Ina Jedef Nasuta Tapti Nat Perkidu Menket Mert M have said Nevan Kayan Gary have her tap SSNM het na Kipra Jata
Let the super letter him in Jadaf Nasu Tati Let Perkadu Men Meridian have said that in
Gary
have heard that SSNM had not Tanahe Ren as Jetta
Net Nasumer Pu Natram Ina Jedef Nasuta Tapti Nat Perkidu Menket Mert M have said Neban Gayan Gary have her tap SSNM het na Kipra Jata
Let the Suma Punere Ine Jadaf Nasu Tati Perkadu Men can Meridian have said that in time Gary had heard tap SSNM had name Tanaharin Estata
Nat Nasumer Pu Natram Ina Jedef Nasuta Tapti Nat Perkidu Menket Mert M have said Neban Kayan Gary have her tap SSNM het na Kepara Jata
Net Natsuma Punanahan Ina Jeff Nasu Hetapi Net Perkedu Minket Merdim have said that in Kain Gary have heard tap SSNM had Tanahan Estata
Nasumer Pu Natram Ina Jedef Nasuta Tapti Nat Perkidu Menket Mert M have said Neban Kayan Gary have her tap SSNM het na Kepra Jata
Net Nasumar Punadahin Ina Jada Nasu Hetati Net Parkeda Minkin Murdim have said that in Kain Gary have heard that SSNM had there Tanaharin as Jetta
Nasudi Hetap Nat Perkido DDS Ka Uab Amuneb Nefershep Si Het Nat Hetap
Nasupi Hatat Net Perkedu DDS Ka Wabamanet Nefersepsi Het Net Hatat
Nasudi Hetap Nat Perkido DDS Ka Uab Amuneb Nefershep Si Het Nat Hetap
Nasupi Hatat Net Perkedu DDS Ka Wabamanet Nefersepsi Het Net Hatat
Nesut dihetep net perkidu. DDS ka uab amuneb nefershep si het ne hete.
Nesubi hetepnet perkeru. DDS ka oabamunep nefersepsi. Hedne hetep.
Nesut dihetep net perkidu. DDS ka uab amuneb nefershep si het ne hete.
Nesubi hetepnet perkeru. DDS ka oabamunep nefersepsi. Hedne hetep.
Nesut dihetep net perkidu. DDS ka uab amuneb nefershep si het ne hete.
Nesuti hetepnet perkeru. DDS ka uabamonep nefershepsi. Edne hete.
Stop here for a silent reflection before proceeding to your assignment. This scene is from the chapel of the female initiate Amun RDS at the Temple of Amun at Medinat Abu, Egypt. The Menhu priests are ritually and metaphorically slaughtering the bull to prepare its foreleg for the opening of the mouth ceremony being performed on the royal personality by the Geriheb priest. The foreleg replicates the constellation Ursa Major. The ritual denotes an expansion in cosmic consciousness as a conscious awareness of the divine. The initiate's name means Amun has given her the sight of mystic perception of the hidden spirit. And allow your eyes to gaze upon the image of the screen, bringing your attention to the left portion where the female initiate is standing on a block of sand facing the Geriheb priest. Who is holding the chepesh, foreleg of the bull, performing the expansion in consciousness ritual. Allow your mind to gaze upon the image on the screen. Gently close your eyes, visualizing the image. Now seeing yourself as that female initiate standing in front of the Geriheb priest. You are essentially receiving the expansion and consciousness ritual. If you lose the visual, bring it back gently, concentrating that you are this initiate receiving this ritual. Now allow yourself to expand beyond your body. You're expanding, filling the space of your worship area or the room where you are in at this moment. You fill every space in this room, every single point, every milliliter, every millimeter of this room. Now feel yourself expanding outside of the room into the open space. And you're expanding into that space. In all directions. Filling space itself. Now you're expanding into outer space, to the deep reaches of space above. You're expanding to the far reaches of the universe. Wherever there's space, there you are. So you're expanding into infinity. You realize that you are in every animal, every plant, the seed of every plant, wherever those seeds may be. You're in the ocean within every living creature within the ocean. Your expansion is limitless. You're within the heart of every human being. You are within every star, every planet. Every black hole, every nebula. Within all the stars of all the solar systems that ever exist. Now feel yourself starting to return back to your body. Contracting back towards your body. You're from outer space into open air. Back into your room, your worship space. Collecting back into your body. You hold a conscious awareness that you are the expansive divine self. You hold that realization in the mind. You gently open your eyes. Om tap 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 tap. Okay. So I got a report that from one of the members of the group, and also a notice from YouTube that the class that we did last week cannot be uploaded. It got struck for violation of copyright because of some of the videos that I showed. So I'm not going to hold you to a quiz this week, because someone of you were trying to review the video to study. And so I'm not going to hold you to a quiz, but we'll do a review of everything we've discussed. And then I'll hold you to a quiz next week. And then so we have two things to do today. So we'll do the brief review. It shouldn't take too long because we did a review last week. But I want to make sure that, you know, I'm being fair in the process with you. So if not seeing the video disturbed you and all of that, then we can remedy it by doing another brief review today. And then there's one other thing that I wanted to do more with you, and then we'll go from here. So we have two things to accomplish so far. So here, does someone have a question?
I don't think that I was able to see video number 42. I don't think that was there as well. I looked for that. Maybe somebody else saw it, but I didn't see it.
Uja, video 42 is not going to be there. We're going to miss it because that was the week we had the class, the test. And then say who gave us time off.
Sure.
That's it.
So we're down one video then. That's the one from last week, correct?
Ujani.
Okay. So we'll remedy that by doing this this review again. And then next week, I'll hold you to the quiz. So remember this formula. Ama au Indra, Neb Pet. I means prince. It's really Ati. Ang Ujasinet. So grant praises to Ra, Lord of Heaven, Prince, life, vitality, and health. And remember everything we spoke about that. We went through this formula. And we spoke about its implications with regards to health and with regards to the spiritual evolutionary process of a human being, what it means. And so we discussed the solar principle of Ra. Recall, Ra is a divinity, but also Ra is a cosmic force, and that's the sun. And so from our perspective, when you're eating green plants or whatever, you're actually eating pieces of Ra. Ra is a body because of the chlorophyll that's in the plant substance. So that's an important point. And that's a nice meditation to do, a reflection to do when you're eating foods that are green. Because you know that the sunlight actually is converted to chloroplast, which is it is converted to chlorophyll within the chloroplast of the plant cell. And so the sunlight gets trapped in the plant leaves within the chloroplast of the plant cell as chlorophyll. And so when you're eating greens or drinking greens, you're actually eating and drinking pieces of the sun in the form of chlorophyll. So you're eating the body, bits and pieces of the body of God. So it's like a Eucharist. Every meal is a Eucharist. And remember, we spoke about the Hertet and how I used specific language in that lecture, language such as you have to teach. So remember what you have to teach concerning the Ankh Ujasanet, the life process, the vitality, and the health. And we spoke about the Fisi, to cook, fire. We spoke about how when you ingest food, you should be throwing your foods down into a cauldron, which is your digestive juices, which is if your body is green, you're going to have a cauldron. If your body is brown, which, from the meat, flesh foods, your body is going to be soft and fluffy and because you're going to have a lot of fat tissue. And you're going to dampen down your fire. You're going to put out your fire. You're going to use, and the reason why you put out your fire, recall, because you're using your fire to break down the meat foods. And if your people are doing that, or you are doing that, all of that energy that could be used for something else, like vitality, like health, is being consumed by breaking down the fat foods, and you can't break down all of it, especially with the large amounts that the Western diet entails. Like if you go to a restaurant and buy a steak, you don't get a little piece of meat. You get a whole big steak. That's a lot for a human body to handle. And so you're going to be taking the fire that would be otherwise going to generate vitality in your body. You're going to be taking that fire and trying to consume the meat, and you can't consume all of it. You don't have enough fire to do that. And the substance, the digestive process of the body is not designed for that. So what's going to happen is that these people are going to start storing the waste product of that digestive process within their fat cells, so that they're going to put on weight, they're going to get obese or whatever, and they're going to store some of the waste product within their intestinal tract. In other words, they're going to be storing feces, and that's where you get the large distended bellies and things like that. So you store it in your fat cells and you store it in your gut. You can't get rid of all of it. And that's because the disease process, the arteriosclerotic disease that develops in the heart. And, if you have issues with your brain, vascular system, you know what that's going to lead to. Going to lead to a stroke when the pressures goes up and you have an aneurysm. You know what we're talking about. And that all of that is because putting foods in there that are non-flammable. And what you want to put foods in there that are flammable, which is green, leafy, raw vegetables, minimally cooked, and non-processed foods, not even minimally processed, non-processed foods, to the best that you can. And remember, this is a very important point as healers. Whatever work that you're doing now, whatever work you're going to be doing in the future, you have to realize that you're not working with the same human body that we would have been working with in ancient times. In ancient times, we would have been working with a body that didn't have Coca-Cola in it, that didn't have energy drinks in it, that didn't have refined sugars, and that didn't have pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and we're very rich in nutrients. So the body that you're working with is a very toxic body, bar none. If someone is coming to you, whoever that person is, they're toxic. The average cell of a human being today is way more toxic than it was in ancient times. And so everyone is toxic because the food supply is toxic. And if you don't have a cistern, you're drinking municipal water, you don't buy water. But even if you buy water, studies have been shown that bottled water can have arsenic in it, depending upon where they get the water from, the source of the water. So the water supply is shot. So people are drinking water that has chemicals in it. And if they're drinking water from the tap, forget it. They've been poisoned. So people are walking around with toxic, poisoned bodies. This is basically what's going on. And remember, you have to know the difference between what, fire, and wow, seeds of plants. And how you tell the difference is by the going through the, and there's one thing I want to show you to alleviate some confusion. I guess we'll get to it a little later. But anyway, these words have what is referred to as a determinative. The determinative pretty much tells you what the word is, but you don't pronounce it. It is a determining aspect of the word. So it determines, it gives the word meaning, and it gives the word form. So you can have what, fire, you can have another what that doesn't mean fire, it depends upon the determinative. The determinative is typically the last symbol in the word. So this symbol, which is a flame in a pot, is a determinative for this word, uat. The u is being pronounced by the lasso, the a is being pronounced by the bird, and the t is being pronounced by this upside down bowl, I call it. It's really a cake. But I like to give the visual of an upside down bowl because you can really visualize that. So it means uat, and you see the flame, so uat means fire. Here, uau, you have the same lasso, right? You have the same bird, so that's your ua sound, your ua. You get your u sound by these 3 vertical strikes. So these 3 vertical strikes with the pronunciation u means plural. Like you have seed, which is 1. You add the s, seeds, which is many. Similarly, you have ua, which is 1. You have uau, which is many. But many of what? Again, you have to look at the determinative. So you see a little circle here, that's a seed. So uau means seeds. So if I show you these 2 words on a quiz or a test, the first thing that you can do is you can pronounce the word. You say, okay, this is what, this is wow. Now let me look at the determinative and figure out what this word is. Okay, so this one has the flame, so this is fire. And this one has a little circle, so this is seeds. And that's how you figure it out. Okay, and so it takes a little bit of study, and not a great deal, but a little bit of study so you can remember what the determinative is, so you can remember what the word is. And at this point in your study, this is important. As the SUNU continuing education students are learning now, when we start going through certain texts, we don't have the time to explain all of these nuances. So you have to learn it now, so as a basis for what you're going to be doing later. Okay? And this one is UAM. M. The owl is M. And now you're going to say, okay, but they both have the flame. So what does this one mean? So now is when you have to start memorizing the words. So what is fire? M is to be hot, to burn. So now you have to start memorizing your words. For example, when we're in college, we had to memorize certain terms. Certain terms would be like, let's say an easy one, the left ventricle. You have to memorize that. You have to know where the left ventricle is, as opposed to the right ventricle. So it took some study because you had to know by knowing. Similarly here, you have to know by knowing. So it takes a little bit of study. So when you see this term UAM, you know, to be hot, to burn. And then you have to reflect on the philosophy of what was told by these terms. The fire, you want hot, you want heat, you want to consume, and how you consume green leafy vegetables, the whole bit, you have to try to remember. So it will take a little bit of effort, but you know, we're not going to make it overbearing or too difficult or anything like that. Now, UANEB, U, A, so you same UA sound. Now you throw the N in there, which is the wave line. It looks like the wave of an ocean. So UA, N, so one, and then you have the B, which is the leg from the knee down. So UANEB. And rightly so, it should be UANEBU. That's a typo. So UANEBU means herbs. And how you know this one is, again, you see the plant here. So UANEBU, herbs. UAMU, seeds used in medicine. So you have UAM means to be hot, to burn, and you have UAMU means seeds used in medicine. So here you have to know. And then you have to be able to relate philosophy. So you recall when we're talking about seeds, the seeds used in medicine comes from the plant. So the medicine, your medicine should also have a fire principle attached to it. And so so you get your seeds from your plants to make your medicines, and so therefore your medicines have a certain kind of fire principle to it. So remember that whole talk that we did, that and that's why, and this is the Kemetic principle of herbal and plant medicine. Yeah, this is the basis of it. Your medicines need to have a fire principle, and all of this fire principle is coming from the solar principle. And what's the solar principle? The solar principle is Ra, which is the sun. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the fire from the sun and apply it to the disease. And how you do that is you have to gather the proper herbs, the proper plants, the proper seeds to make the medicines, to generate the fire power of the body, to allow the body to heal itself. Okay? And then Seneb, so here is S, N, and then the B again, to be sound or healthy. You remember what we spoke about, the Senabi, vigor, health, what you need to be generating within your own body. And, and when people come to you, the advice that you give them, it should be seated in this kind of philosophy. Okay, so let's see. There's one thing I want to show you. Put it on the record, as they say. Okay, so I'm putting something here that you can study, you can come back to. Pause the video at this point so you can see. Here's the ancient Egyptian alphabet. So here's the A, which is the bird. And A is also written as the forearm and the upper arm. B is the lower, from the knee down to the toes, B. See, this bowl with the lip is pronounced, usually pronounced K. They have it over here, it's K. And this symbol, the clock, is usually pronounced S. They have it over here. D is the hand. E, and this is more like a phonetic when you're seeing the reed leaf, you can pronounce it E. F is the horned viper. G, so Gur, Gary, that kind of thing. It's pronounced with the, this is like a seat with a triangle in the center. Yeah, H, so H is the twisted flax. The H is like the maize. The other H is like the maize. And I, see, it depends upon what word that you pronounce the reed leaf as E or I, whatever. And the rearing serpent is pronounced J. It's D, J together, but you pronounce it J. Okay, L is a recumbent lion. And M, this is one of the most important signs in the that you'll see, the M, which is the owl. Important because it has great mystical significance. So it can be a phonetic value within a word. It can be a word by itself, and it could be a transitive, meaning a transitory word, like Pert M Heru going forth by or through enlightenment. So it can mean through, by way of, in transition to that kind of context, connotation. So you might see words such as Mhetep, meaning by way or through the union of opposites, that kind of thing. N is the wave line. O, which the lasso. So it pronounced U. The P is the box. K, the side of a mountain or a hill. R, the open mouth. And again, this is another key term because you can see it as a phonetic value. You can see it as an ideogram, meaning it means the word itself. So it can mean open mouth, or it can have the phonetic value of R, depending upon what you're looking at. You have the S, the T, which is upside down bowl. It's really like a cake, but I like calling it a bowl for some reason. And another U sound, similar to the U of the lasso, is a baby chick. This is a chicken, but a baby chick. Also pronounced U. And it's also can be pronounced W, depending upon the word that you're looking at. V, rarely you see the horned viper pronounce it. V, I suppose some in the late period text, that can be true. X with the bull with the lip, and the S, again, in very rare instances. And when you see the two reed leaves together, it's more pronounced like E, like an elongated E, like Annie or Hetepi, that kind of thing. And it's equivalent, and it can also mean I. So this is one of the sophisticated letters, I'll put it that way, because it depends upon how you're using it, determines how you pronounce it. And you have to be reading the text. And the two slash lines also has that E sound. And what it means is something that's dual, like hetepi, dual, doubly at peace, something like that. Okay, and then you have Z, which is the door bolt, which is it's like a long metal rod with like a lump in the center that latches onto doors, that keeps doors closed. And in some cases, it can also be pronounced S. And SH is a triangle. And sometimes you see the triangle with two horizontal lines within it. It's the same SH pronunciation. So Shep or Shetaut, the SH sound. And this is a hobble. You put this on horses so that they don't move. And the pronunciation, it can be CH, but it's more like TJ, like Jetta, like phonetically related to that. And the circle with the lines going through it is pronounced like Ka, like Ket or Kemp, like that. So you can go back and you can look at these letters when you're studying your terms, when you're studying your terms. So you can see what letters are in the term, and then you can memorize, it'd be better for you to memorize. So you can see Waneb, you can see it for yourself, clearly when you go back to the listing, and you can see, okay, that's how they're getting that. And so you're not just going by blind memorization, but you have something to put it in context, which is the alphabet. Okay, so that's for your study.
Who just say who? Would you go back to that slide with the alphabet, please?
Yes.
So the double lines mean dual, or both the double reads as well mean dual? Did both of them, just one of them?
They both can mean dual. So the two slash lines for sure means dual. The two reed leaves can be a phonetic like E, like hetepi, or it depends upon what you're looking at. In late period text, the two reed leaves can also mean dual. So the two reed leaves can mean dual, but does not always mean dual. The two slash lines always mean dual.
Dual.
Or almost always. Because again, it generally means dual, the two slash lines. So you have to be careful what text you're looking at to make the proper determination. Okay, so hopefully that'll make it more present to the mind when you can see the alphabet. And remember, we went through Senbu, we discussed Senbu, the deity of health. You're related to Heru. And this is a standard that actually means divinity. You put all three of them together, you get gods and goddesses. In one of the texts related to Goddess Net, you see this symbol 3 times, which means gods and goddesses, which is a very rare usage of this symbol for gods and goddesses. So it's kind of interesting. So remember to go over this in general. And remember this formula. Ang, Jed, Was, Ned, Seneb. So life, verticality, flow, all, health. And let's see. So I don't want to make it so that it's overbearing for you. So that's why we're going through this. This Seneb, I'm going to add the neb to it so you can get the full formula. This is a very important formula that you need to know. So Jed, Was. So light, process, verticality, flow, light process, and also Ankh, that also means immortality. So that's the top row. So that's here. Then you have Neb. Neb, all. And that's right here. The bowl. Okay. Then you have Seneb. means health. That's right here. So here you have your S, your N, and your B, Senate. And then you have a very important determinative. It's called a Medjat. And Medjat means was abstract. So we're talking about an abstract concept. So it doesn't mean only physical health. It means the health of the astral and the soul. It's really referring to health of the soul through the astral. And here's the Medjat. It's a gift box. So you don't pronounce this, but you know what it means. And then you have Neb again. Okay, now let's make it large. Okay, so remember this formula and what we spoke about it. So Ankh Jed was Neb, Seneb, Neb. Okay, and remember, it's just a quiz. So if you're working with it or you're working through it, it's fine. You're preparing to really get into it, to delve into it at a later time. This is the entry point. Okay. Now, you know that this is big. And obviously, this is going to be on your final. And this whole philosophy and this whole principle is going to be on your final. And why is because the philosophy behind it. And so we spoke about how Anpu is actually giving the Senate Neb, and she's receiving the Senate Neb. And recall this panel is from the exact same structure, the Nubian chapel in front of the Medina Habu, that your reflective panel on the Sabahat website is from. It's the same, in the same building. So this is a big portion of your philosophical backing. And you can see why this has a heavy philosophical impulse towards the Seneb aspect, which is the health. You have three aspects of health to contend with as a human being. Your physical aspect, your mental aspect, and your soul aspect. So recall the philosophy behind this, and remember that it is Anpu that is giving it over. So don't be lost on that either. Anpu is the divinity of discrimination. Where does Anpu come from? He is the child of Asar and Nebahet, right? So he's coming from soul and mortality. And therefore, he's instinctual mind. Instinctual mind that is purified and therefore is determinative, meaning it develops its discriminative capacity. So the mind of discrimination is coming through the instinct, because the instinct is purified. If the instinct is not purified, then the human being is basically acting like an animal. If your instinctual mind becomes purified, then you're acting with discrimination. You're able to determine, to discriminate between ma'at and unma'atin action, between what is fundamentally real and what is illusory, and what is healthy and what is not healthy. And that's all operating in the mind. And healthy and not healthy doesn't necessarily mean foods. It can mean thoughts, feelings, certain desires, you know, that they're not healthy. So the Seneb philosophy is, we're going to be spending a lot of time with that. Again, this is the entry point where, you know, you're entering into it. Okay, so don't think that you have to be all perfect and everything and know everything about it just yet. Okay, remember the Nefer and Ankh Uja Seneb. Nefer and remember that we discussed that and what we said about it. Okay. And recall your teaching on the Hentasu, and we discussed on regeneration, regenerative capacity, and how you regenerate the body. And any of you can do it. Any person really can do it if they put a lot of effort into it. It doesn't matter if you've had surgery. It doesn't matter if you've been sick before. The body is so powerful in its regenerative capacity if you give it the right, if you essentially give it the right food. That's what it comes down to. And so you can regenerate the vital forces of your body. You can make your body very healthy and strong. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort in, you know, in modern times. But we have the tools in modern times too. You know, you have juicers that you can easily juice something. I'm going to come back to this. This is what I wanted to discuss more heavily today. I'm going to come back to this. Remember these teachings on vegetarianism and the flesh foods. We discussed the flesh foods and how they cause disease. We draw the correlation between the and the metua, the flesh foods, and the flesh food and the flesh food, that the connotation of death behind the flesh foods. We discussed these determinatives, the piece of flesh, and the man with essentially hitting himself in the head with an axe. We discussed the afa, the plants, the afao. Again, it's good to go through it this way. The afao plants, we discussed that. Food, bread. And again, when you're going through these terms, look at the determinative. So this is a loaf of bread. They're long rounded at the end. And this is a plant here. So look at the determinatives. Ari Ma and Ari Empetep. Remember we discussed issues concerning that. Integrity. Menkit, to do your very best. Remember we discussed issues about that. And remember we spoke about the superfluous aspect of the food, the causative for disease coming from Herodotus and his studies. And the animals. And remember we showed the CAFOs. We showed the farming of fish, and we showed what they do with the pork, with the pigs. So put all of that together when you're reading into this philosophy and a teaching of how these animals are treated in modern times, and if it is a good idea for us to be ingesting those foods on top of what is already known about them. So the modern industrial agriculture has added another layer of indication not to eat, not to consume flesh foods. Because you're consuming the energies, their hormones, their diseases that your body have to deal with. They're living in unsanitary conditions. And so people who have a high flesh diet, we really look at it, they're assaulting. The assault that they put on their body with every meal is incredible when you really think about it. So you're not going to convince your family members or anybody in your family you know in one conversation. So don't even try. But for your own knowledge, you can see how it is such an assault on the body. Number one, you're eating the flesh food by itself, which is not healthy. And in ancient times, the priests and priestesses didn't eat flesh foods. In fact, there was you can even call it a phobia around flesh. They wouldn't wear wool of sheep or anything like that, when other people would. So they're not eating flesh foods, and they're eating primarily a vegan diet, whole foods diet. So you don't have an assault on the body. When you start putting in flesh foods on there, that's an assault. And the reason why we spoke about the digestive process that the foods have to go through for the digestive system to break it down. And that is in ancient times with no industrial agriculture. So the animals were cleaner because they're not standing in their own feces all day. The animals were healthier because they were eating the foods that were designed for their body. So cows weren't eating grain, they're actually eating grass. And pigs weren't, they weren't laying on their side for the whole entire life. Chickens weren't all clumped together and filled with antibiotics. They have to put in an enormous amount of antibiotics in these animals, or else they'll get highly diseased. So they have to feed them antibiotics. And now, in modern times, you're eating all of that. You're putting that on top of the inherent danger of eating the flesh food itself. So you're assaulting their bodies by doing it. So you have to put all of that together, put this philosophy together within the modern context, and it becomes very clear that you should be adopting a different kind of diet. Spoke about a little of the digestive system. This is big. The cause and effect diagram. Mint means sickness, heat, sickness, disease. Adiu, sum total of all Ari, Adi. So the cause and effects principles. There's principle of causation. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. You have to memorize this. This is something you have to memorize. And from Mary Carra, an action is repaid by its like, and every action there is a consequence. Okay, so you have to memorize these comedic laws of causation. You have to be familiar with this diagram. And you have to be able to go through the diagram. Cause A, condition A, cause B, cause C, condition B, effect. So you have to know what is happening at each level of the introduction of the food to the body. Okay, so we went through this. So you're not going to be, you can take it easy on this slide. But on this slide, you have to get into it. And remember we spoke about there's some subtle concepts of the connection between the spine and the heart, and how they're connected together, how they're actually one fused system. The modern medicine doesn't look at it that way. Rightly so, they look at the heart and lungs as a fused system. But upon close examination, coming from our spiritual ancestors, the heart is actually also connected to the spine through the vast complex of the Metu system. And so you have to be able to go through this slide and remember the philosophy behind it. The astab means the position where the heart is in the body. You know how to find the heart. Add the cardiac muscle. And you have to know one thing. You have to realize that the divine spirit is the essence of the heart. It's the life of the heart. And that's why the heart beats without conscious control. There's a life essence behind it that is causing it to beat. And that life essence is the divine. And we call her Net. We spoke about the ukeru, which is the disease process, which is the inflammation that is built up in the body, again, through the diet. How that inflammation affects the mind, and what happens when you actually cleanse the mind of ukeru through, again, proper diet, meditation, and how that develops a clear light mind, and how the spinal column and the heart are intertwined. And remember this line from the Edwin Smith Surgical Papyrus, and recall that it's being read from right to left. And what it's talking about it's basically showing us that there was pulsation. There was a recognition that you can take the pulse, and they took it from the myocardium, the heart itself. Okay. I'm going to come back to this at a later time. This is very complicated, so we'll do with this once you get through what we've spoken about. Okay, so we won't touch this as yet. We did a little with it, but we're not going to. Let's get through your quiz next week, and then we'll get to these more complicated areas. Okay, are there any questions about anything?
Uja, not related to the quiz per se, Sehu, but when you were talking about the standard and Heru was on the standard, and you had mentioned earlier that there were several gods, maybe several Neteru on the standard. So when you see with the other Neteru, well, I guess it was a concept I didn't totally understand. I think, I don't remember what, yes, that's it. So is that only with Heru, the Sinbu, or it looked like there may have been two Ampus and Jehudi. I thought looked like the other divinities. Would you see the Jehudi on the standard, or you would not see that?
Right. So the standard, which is, I'll show you what the standard is. So let's put in a new slide. Oops, sorry. And we're all on the same page. So this is the standard. If you take out the divinity, you're left with the standard. So the divinities stand on top of the standard. So depending upon which text you're looking at, bring it up a little more. Depending upon which text you're looking at or what idea is being presented, you can have Jehuti standing on it. You can have Anpu. Yeah, all of the divinities are not all of the divinities are seen on the standard, but all of the divinities have the I guess the capacity to stand on the standard. So if we go back here, here's the standard with divinities standing on top of it. So if we take this out, we go here. You can see here, so you have the Hawk divinity, you have Jehuti, you have Anpu, Wepwet, all standing on the standard. So, and that's because the divinities in this room, there's an emphasis on this formula. That this from here to here is a spiritual formula, really, related to the royal, the Pradau, the Prada. And so these 4 lines is a mystical formula. And these divinities are the primary energies of this formula. And so to, I guess, highlight the formula, they constructed it in a way with the divinities on top of the standards related to which aspect, the specific aspect of the formula that they are energizing or that they are overseeing or they are energizing or purveyor of. So it depends upon what the sages want to do with a particular formula or text or philosophical idea would determine if the divinities are presented on a standard or not. And then certain divinities are, and some divinities are not. But these are the primary divinities that you do see on standards. Okay.
So Sinbu, the deity of health, only refers to Heru on the standard. The others are not part of Sinbu.
Right. So I put this Sinbu is not part of this formula. I put it here to show that there is a healing divinity with the Hawk aspect. So healing is actually coming from spirit consciousness or spiritual illumination is the highest form of health. And that's your Heru, the fullness of Heru aspect. So there's an aspect of striving for health that has a Heru component, aspirational component behind it, and the fulfillment of that health, which is the fulfillment of the realization of the soul, is the Heru of health. You follow or?
Ni.
One. And you can see that the Senbu is phonetically related to health. Senet, Senbu. Okay, anything else?
Me, getting back to that. So Seneb, and with the U behind it, does that mean more than, does it mean, I guess, I don't know, the concept of more than one health or lots of health, or is that incorrect with that?
What do you mean, the pronunciation of U?
Ni, as in being, meaning multiple.
In this context, it does not mean multiple. It's just a phonetic. A phonetic. It's just how you pronounce the word, the name. Mhm. So this, going back to that, so this alphabet, where did I put it? So this alphabet is generally how to look at things, which will help you to make sense of when you're going through the terms and so forth. But in reading the text, it becomes more complicated. So not all the letters relate the same way all the time. It depends on if you're reading a monumental inscription, meaning if you're like reading an obelisk or a panel from a temple, or the outside enclosure walls of the temples. Or there are different rules when you're looking at the hieratic script. Remember we spoke about hieratic. Or there are different rules when you're looking at say a mathematical text or a medical text. And then there are different rules when you're looking at a late period text. You have to recall ancient Egyptian civilization was a very long, they have thousands and thousands of years. And so the earliest text will not read the same as the later period text. Meaning the later period text is like, it is a bad example, but to give the idea. The earliest text, which is the pyramid text, is like classical English. And the late period text is like modern English. And you know how modern English is. You have words like Twitter, which, where did that come from? And then you have the slang words. It's all convoluted. So the late period text, if you're not looking at a good, well-constructed text by someone who knew what they were doing, can seem convoluted and nonsensical and doesn't comport with the canon of the teaching of philosophy. But you can find some late period texts that are well written, and then you find some you're like, well, what's going on here? So, saying that to say that the letters is like an entry point into the whole complexity of the hieroglyphic script, because you have early Egyptian, you have Middle Egyptian, you have late Egyptian, and then some texts, like in the hieratic script, you have to be careful, because if you have someone with poor handwriting, you can miss things, and things doesn't look right. Just like today, if you find someone with poor handwriting, it might be difficult to read the writing. Similarly with the hieratic is like that. But if you find someone with a decent, very clear and coherent handwriting, and you get a hieratic text, script, a document, you know, it's relatively easy to read. But again, there are differences. There are certain kinds of differences. And I'll show you I'll show you how it works from the medical text perspective. And come out of here for now. Let's go up here. So this is the far right line, the far right are symbols from the surgical papyrus and how they're written. And the middle line is from the Ebers papyrus and other papyri and how they're written. And on the left is more of the classical presentation. So let's take a look at this symbol, men. Men means to be established. It's one of the ways of knowing men. And in the Ebers papyrus, look how it's written. This is a hieratic, and in the Smith papyrus, it's written differently. There's a different. It's not entirely off, but you have to know what you're looking at to make sense of it. And they all mean min, the same thing. Similarly, if you look at the term for awit in the Cole, I believe this is a Cole Myers papyrus, something like that. You see how it's written. And in the Edwin Smith papyrus, look how it's written. It's something that almost looks entirely different. So here's the FR, Safir. And this is how it is in the Ebers papyrus. And look how it looks in the Smith papyrus. So that's what I was saying. You have to know what you're looking at. And it takes a lot of study and going into it and being able to make the discernment so that you can be able to understand what it is that you're looking at when you're looking at it. And reading hieratic is not that easy. It's a special kind of genre. The easiest to read is a classical, which is on the left, because you can see they're straight, the lines are very distinct. The features of the characters are very distinct. It's not hard to make out. And once you start getting into the hieratic, then the features, here's the boat, the Precept papyrus, you can say, okay, and then look how it is in the Smith papyrus. So you have to be able to delineate, but that takes a lot of study. So when we're looking at the alphabet, let's see. We're looking at we're looking more at the classical presentation of symbols. Oops, sorry. What happened? So when you're looking at this alphabet, you're looking more at the classical. Gee, why is it doing this? One moment, let me try to figure out why the PowerPoint is acting this way. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, here we go. So share screen, okay. So when you're looking at these symbols, you're looking at the classical presentation of the symbols. And you find the classical presentation, you can find them on monuments, find them in tombs, and certain artifacts like coffins and so, not coffins, but on sarcophagi. Sarcophagi is, the stone, the stone burial, the body holder of the body. Now, when you start looking at coffins and you start looking, which we will look at coffins, especially if we do a trip, we're going to do a special study on coffins, which that's what's going to happen this summer if we can get it done. We're taking a trip with the Abdullah class. We're going to do a special study on coffins. When you do coffins, then you have to revert back more to the hieratic and the coffin text genre and how they wrote the symbols. So this is how you get started. You have to get started looking at the block symbols, at the classical symbols. And then once you get into the classical symbols, then you can start working if you want to. You don't have to, because it takes a lot of work and energy. You can start getting into looking at the hieratic symbols and comparing them and so forth. So you're able to go through different genre. And that's what's pretty much happening with me. I'm being able to work through different genres because of looking at these various texts that I became interested in. And if you're going to look at the text and if you're interested and you want to look at the text and you want to know what they're saying, then you have to go through the pains of looking at and trying to figure it out and study the symbols and so forth. So to give you an idea, that when you see a term like symbol, or you see the standard, it all depends on the context and what you're looking at when you're looking at it. You can't say that this is how it is all the time, every time you see it. For example, the symbol S, this S. This S can mean she, it can mean her, it can mean hers, or it can mean its. Or it can merely be a phonetic value, S. So it's what you're looking at the time determines what the symbol actually means. Did that little explanation help any?
Me, very much so. Dua.
No problem. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Oh, we're almost done. Okay. The same thing happened this morning. We took almost 2 hours looking at one line of text. Okay, so what I wanted to look at more closely with you is this. And can anyone tell me what is Sage Akhenaten famous for? What is he known for? Let's start there.
Uja.
That's too headache. You can't answer. You're out of this.
Okay.
You probably have the correct answer. Who else wants to answer? What is Sage Akhenaten famous for? Anyone?
Nee,
Mm-hmm.
said erroneously, he was said to have been a heretic. I know that's how I had learned him to be, that he was the one that brought forth monotheism to Kemet. I thought it was a very interesting point that you made with him standing in the Asarian pose if he only believed in Aten, and some other instances, I think, in this that you mentioned that also were not consistent with what he had been accused of.
Very good. So I wanted to do a little more with this because that's a very important point. So here he is, Sage Akhenaten, and as we discussed, he's in a Assyrian pose. And this is the pose of one of your yoga postures, one of the postures. And he's being presented, being represented as a star. And we know that because he's holding a cloak and a flail, and he has his arms across his chest. And down here, he's being presented as Heru. How do we know that? Is because of the side lock and what's going on in the scene. So his body form, this is a synthesis of a mythological form and a naturalistic style. Naturalistic style means this is perhaps how this person looked when he was alive 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. And mythological form because he's standing in the mythological posture of a sar. So this is like if you were to stand in the posture of a sar and someone took a picture of you. You have your naturalistic form, which is your own physical body, but you're standing in a mythological posture. So this is like a snapshot photograph, but we know that it's a stone carving. And as you can see, he doesn't shape his body in the form of the Middle Kingdom or even the early Kingdom kings that very strong and muscular and, you know, with a nice firm body. He shows his defects, his little pouch. You know, he has more rounded hips. You can still see men today, some men with rounded hips. Doesn't mean that they're gay or anything. It's just how their body is shaped. So you can see him with his rounded hips, and he has a little pouch in his body. So it's a naturalistic style. And then you see him down here as a boy, once more in the naturalistic style. And the naturalistic style also fused with the mythological form. The mythological form of Heru Pakard, meaning Heru the solar child. He's holding the bow and the arrows, and as we spoke about, there's goddess net inference because he has the arrows and he's plunged them into the scorpion. And you know the story. And on the top of his head here, it looks like what was here was the plumes of Amun. And the plumes of Amun are the goddesses Aset and Nebuchadnezzar. And he is wearing the Nemi scarf, or the crown of the lion power. And so again, the lion powers Horem Akhet. So you have Asar going on here. You have Amun. You have Horem Akhet, and then you have the goddess. At the top of the forehead, you see the raised serpent, the raised Urias, and that's Arat. And Arat is a manifestation of Goddess Net. The Goddess Net manifests all of the goddesses, or variants of her. And so you have the goddess going on, and then you have another goddess in play, as we spoke about. You have Goddess Aset, who is infusing the life force. So if he was a heretic king or a monotheist, then what is going on here? Okay, what is the point of all of this? If he's a monotheist. Monotheism means that there is one God to the exclusion of other divinities. And you should be knowing by now, I hope, that we don't ascribe to that idea. Because if you ascribe to that idea, it means that there are no cosmic forces, really. Their nature is separate from divinity. And we know that that cannot be the case from the perspective of philosophy, from high philosophy. And so monotheistic philosophy is a kind of an infantile way of looking at divinity. It's kind of a childish view. And the henotheistic way, if you really look at it and study it, that's like PhD times 5 kind of understanding of divinity. It's high philosophical concepts, and these subtle concepts of how the divine manifests in many different ways and operative forms, and present as cosmic forces, cosmic powers, cosmic energy forms, etc. So if he is a monotheist, why are we having a crook and a flail? Why we're having bows and arrows? Why we're having a side lock? Why we're having plumes on our head? Why we're having a serpent on our forehead? So this whole idea of Sage Akhenaten being a monotheist, from the perspective of looking at philosophy, is a grave error. It's a very big mistake. So what was this whole thing about? He had come around in a time where there were lots of rituals in the temples. A ritual for this, a ritual for that, rituals ongoing. And he wanted to go back to an older original teaching of more that there is only divinity. There is only spirit being. Rituals are good, but there's only spirit being. So he went back to the principle of the divine light. But if you look at that philosophy, you read the hymns, he is calling on Heru-Behudet, he's calling on Shu, he's calling on the beings of light. So if it's monotheism, why we're having Heru-Behudet in there? Why we're having Shu in there? You know, what's that all about? And the reason why it's having those divinities is is because Anunian theology is closely related to Atonism. Is basically they're looking at the same solar principle from a slightly different perspective. And you know from your studies that we've discussed that from Ra comes Shu and Tefnut. So it's coming from a principle of that solar light, which is Shu. And if he is the first monotheist, and they have to kind of say that to try to substantiate their idea or their view of Egyptology. Because if they say anything other than that, then there are certain things that they would have to admit that they don't want to or readily admit. One of those things would be that Islam, Christianity, Judaism came way after and was not seen by the ancient sages as an advanced practice of religion. Because if it was an advanced practice of religion, the ancient Egyptians would have adopted it. So to try to make things seem advanced that are not advanced, they have to say, oh, this one is the first monotheist. And so that's why we have monotheism today, and that's why monotheism is the best. And if you look at the world, the condition of the world, you will know that that's not the case. The United States of America, they can't even take care of their own children. As soon as school gets back, you're going to start having the school shootings again. You have police that are killing children, and there are a whole slew of social issues. There's nothing for kids to do. There's no, especially for young boys. I think I've said this before. Young boys need mentorship kind of thing. And so the whole society is messed up. Now, if this is some kind of monotheistic idea, then what are we doing here with Aset and Hentusu together? On the right, you have the Hentusu, Nesu, the A is from this midline to the edge of the document. Nesu Dihetep asked Nepet Hinu Neteru. A royal peace offering is given to this great goddess, Aset, mistress of all other gods and goddesses. So she's the mistress of the gods and goddesses. And not only is she being presented as the mistress, but he's giving a royal peace offering to this divinity, Aset. And she is the one, the primary divinity in the scene that is associated with this text. And what she's doing is she's infusing life force process of immortality into Sage Akhenaten. And he's supposed to be a monotheist. And he's going to the goddess for realization of immortality. It doesn't make sense. It's not congruent with what the text is saying, or the philosophy is saying, what the principle is saying. So I'm saying this to you because health, you have to have a healthy mind. You have to have a healthy view. And all of us have been contaminated by this amystical society. And we are in the business of decontaminating ourselves. And so we cannot go along with these ideas. And so everything needs to be verified. And who is the authority on this verification? The text. The text is the verification. The sages, they say it, we try to teach it, we make the translations, we put it out there. But it's a text that is refuting these erroneous concepts and ideas. And so he has a set on one side. Yeah, this is a monotheist. He has a set on one side, and he has Hentasu on the other side. Nesu di hetep Hentasu, netera di ket nefrehem. A royal peace offering is given to Hentasu, the divinity of regeneration of vital forces and consciousness reestablishment of spirit soul gives to him. Sage King Akhenaten, who appears as Heru Pakar, who has shot arrows into Set in a scorpion form, denaturing the effects of Set's poison, and therefore nullifying the appearance of duality. The appearance of duality is coming through the two arrows into the scorpion, means that the poison is the appearance of duality. And you're sparing that poison, you're destroying that faculty that brings the poison of duality. And so all human beings are poisoned by the appearance of duality. We've been poisoned by that. And we need to shoot arrows into that. And the arrows are the arrows of that nullifies duality by destroying that which distributes the poison, which is the ego. So in essence, we're nullifying the effects of the ego with the arrows of spirit consciousness. And this allows us to undergo a regeneration of that higher consciousness by rebuilding our body, our physical body, rebuilding our mental body, our mind, and regenerating the power of the soul to discover its underlying unitary essence, which is Nebuchadnezzar. You want to call it net, you go right ahead, which is the same net. For this valiant effort, in conjunction with his peace offering, Hentasu gives him all good and beautiful things for his renewal festival. So Hentasu is giving him the processes for the Hebset, the festival of renewal of higher spirit consciousness. And so how is this being done? If this is monotheism, how can this be possible? So in other words, we have to get those ideas out of our heads so that we can understand the teaching and the philosophy properly, which elevates us. And it elevates us spiritually, but it also causes us to be dignified, honorable people. And that's more than being a good person. Being dignified is being honorable. We seat ourselves in the consciousness of spirit being. And that helps us to become powerful healers and with strong understanding of the healing philosophy and the principles that goes along with it. Okay, so we ran out of time to do much more. I was thinking we would have more time, but it's okay. We covered some fundamental issues that are very important. Okay, so that will be it for today. Are there any questions before we log off? So now we're getting into the thick of things. So go over what we spoke about today and prepare, be about maybe a 20 question. It won't be more than 30 questions, 20 question quiz, just a quiz. to start getting your feet wet with these concepts and ideas, and starting to, to bring to memory and to learn the determinatives and so forth, and things like that. Okay. Okay, call and response. Nesu di hitep net perkeru. DDS ka uab amunet ne persepsi. Et ne eten.
Esudi hateb net perkeru. DDS
Let's
ka.
call up amanep nefershepsi. Edne ete.
Om hatep 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 hatep.
Om hatep 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 hatep.
Hatep.
Yeah.
Hatep.
Yeah.
Hatep.